Hi, I'm Gregory Hodgson here at the 2018 Canadian Science Policy Conference, being joined by Mary Rose Bradley-Gill. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
So you are the co-president of the Science and Policy Exchange, correct?
Right, yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about your role with the organization and what you do?
Right, so Science and Policy Exchange, or SPE, is a nonprofit based in Montreal. We're completely student and postdoc run, so I'm also a PhD student in biology at McGill, and we just do this in our free time. And we aim to provide a platform for discussing science policy for students. So that's both providing a platform, so we run events around science policy, bringing students together with leaders in government and academia and industry to discuss topics in science policy, as well as we also like to provide the student voice in science policy, particularly around policy around science, because this really affects students and they're not always a voice at the table, so we try to provide that voice. And we've done that through different campaigns. Like last year, we ran a campaign to support the Fundamental Science Review, joining the scientific community with the Support the Report campaign, and we did a student version of it called Students for the Report. So through initiatives like that, and we've also followed that up recently with a survey on graduate student and postdoctoral funding.
Right, that's excellent. I remember I took part in the survey, actually.
Okay, great.
And you participated in a panel entitled Shaping Science Policy to Improve Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion in Science, organized by the Fonds de Recherche du Québec here at the CSPC this year. What was your take on how the panel went? And I know that the Science and Policy Exchange presented a report on EDI and science. How did that factor into the panel?
Right, so we were really happy that Fonds de Recherche gave the student voice on this panel because the other panelists were from NGOs and funding agencies saying what kind of policies they're doing to promote EDI. So my role on the panel is provide the student perspective, and Science and Policy Exchange has always tried to promote EDI in everything we do. But we also ran this specific event called Breaking Gender Barriers in STEM in a series that we call SP Cafes, which we hold on different topics in science policy. And we invite students and other stakeholders to a local cafe. So it's in an intimate setting. We get 20 to 30 people, and we pick a topic or a problem and brainstorm solutions on it. So this one was on, as I mentioned, breaking gender barriers in STEM, and we asked participants to reflect on barriers they think women and underrepresented face in STEM and research in general, and then asked them to reflect on solutions both at a personal level, local level, and an institution level. And we put together what they said in a report. So the report was mainly a reflection of our audience, which was mostly women graduate students with a few men represented. And we disseminated the report as best we could. We sent it to the Minister of Science and contacts we had at the funding agencies. And we've been slowly disseminating it more and more. And so the report outlined different barriers that graduate students felt women faced. These included everything from family planning to criteria of excellence, other things like discrimination and sexual harassment, and just getting everyone in on the conversation about EDI. And we also had a list of 20 recommendations to go with this, addressing some of the barriers are very specific, like things about family and giving more encouragement around parental leave, and then others were just more to address many of these barriers, such as just creating dialogues and having financial support from institutions for initiatives in EDI and things like that. So I thought our part in the panel was very complementary to what the institutions are doing. So they were talking about policies that are actively happening, and we are saying similar things and hopefully with our recommendations we can also influence how they're thinking about putting in these policies.
I think it's really great that both the Science and Policy Exchange and the FRQ are so focused on initiatives for EDI in science. It's really a great thing to see. I wonder if you could just elaborate on the discussion that happened in the panel a little bit in terms of things that you touched on in what you were just saying about not only initiatives but brainstorming solutions, and just could you speak to some of the challenges in improving the status of EDI in science?
Yeah, so I think the panel was a great focus on solutions. Like, I think we have a lot of discussion on what implicit bias is and like what these barriers are, and now we're really ready to talk about, well, most of us are ready to talk about solutions. What exactly was the question?
Just about what are the greatest challenges that are faced in improving the status of EDI in science?
Yeah, I think there's still some resistance in science and research. People still don't always recognize or fully understand what implicit bias is and how deeply it is entrenched in our daily lives. And especially for researchers, it's this concept of merit, and they want the best scientists there. But they don't always realize that there's been a history of implicit bias and people being passed over for awards for other reasons, and different kinds of merit should be just as valuable. So I think a lot of these policies are trying to get those messages across, and hopefully by institutionalizing them and the more support we get from institutions, the more people will realize how valuable it is, and just how valuable it is to get everyone into science and research in general, to have a more diverse and inclusive environment.
So really making sure that everyone understands exactly what equity, diversity, and inclusion means.
Yeah, exactly.
That it's not just gender bias, it's all types of implicit bias, and the importance of it and the value that can be obtained by having diversity in research and in the workplace in general.
Yeah, exactly. It's in everyone's best interest, and in science and in innovation's best interest, that we get everyone at the table.
So can I ask you, just as a final question then, what do you see as the greatest value of the Canadian Science Policy Conference?
It's definitely bringing everyone together. And of course, all the great panels that come up, but I think getting everyone in one space where we can talk about these issues and start coming up with ideas and collaborating. It's been really especially useful for Science and Policy Exchange. As students, we don't always get to connect with people in Ottawa. So hearing what people have to say and then getting their support on things that we do has been really useful for us.
That's great. Before we sign off then, would you just like to tell our audience where they can go online perhaps to learn a little bit more about the Science and Policy Exchange and the work that you're doing with the FRQ as well?
Yeah, so our website is sp-exchange.ca, and we're also very active on social media. Our Twitter is @DSP_SPE, and we're also on Facebook, so you can follow us on social media and find us online.
All right, well, thank you very much for speaking with
me.
It was really a pleasure.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.